So thank you very much for having me here. I'm very, very excited to learn about this movement of innovative learning methods in STEM and STEAM, and especially innovative methods based on arts practice. And today I was asked to talk about a couple of cases where I use my experience in theater to train engineers and entrepreneurs or business managers. Just a little bit about myself. I am a theater practitioner, theater maker. I've been working in theater for over 15 years as a playwright, translator, a director. I started as a performer. I sometimes do stand-up still. The plays that I've translated, probably the most popular one is The Pillow Man, known by the Lithuanian title of Pagalivinis, which is still in theater. I also studied drama in education, so in Dublin City University in Ireland. So basically, I was kind of taught how to use drama tools or theater tools in various classrooms of various subjects. And then when I started teaching full-time, I decided that I need to combine this experience with 15 plus years experience that I've had in my classrooms and on the stage, and use it in my own lectures or in my own sessions. And today I'm going to talk about two cases. One is dealing with training entrepreneurs and the other one engineers. So why? I use theater-based practices in my classroom with three purposes. First is to raise awareness to an issue or a problem. And you see the little logo in the upper left corner of my slides, which says Ethnic Kitchen. And that's the title of a documentary play where I recruited 7 immigrant women in Lithuania to share their stories with the audience. And at the time when we did that, that was 2012, 2013, that wasn't even a topic in the public discourse. People thought that we do not have this problem and we do not have any immigrants at all. So, but just putting these people on stage and making a narrative out of their stories kind of created a very powerful impact and a point of reflection for the society. So raising awareness to an issue is important, one of the very, kind of important goals when you use theater-based or arts-based techniques. Second aim is a little bit of a meso level, if you like, is to humanize a problem. And this is where sustainability comes in. This is where corporate social responsibility comes in. This is where all those kind of soft competence issues comes in, because I don't know what your experiences are, and maybe you'll share them in our Q&A session. But when you start teaching business students corporate social responsibility, they immediately say it's a waste of time. We do not need it. All we need to care is about profit. If the people are earning enough, they're fine with whatever you do with them, basically, or whatnot, right? So when you actually put a human face to the problem, when you use the simplest role-playing exercises, forum theater exercises, and when you ask your students themselves to enact certain roles, suddenly this problem kind of becomes human. It has a face and it becomes more relevant and more important. So that's another aim that we can achieve with the theater-based techniques. And the final kind of micro level, I very often use theater-based techniques or theater-based teaching methods to develop students' teamwork and adaptive leadership skills. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in my case study. And the case study is a module that I taught at the MBA Entrepreneurship program at Vilnius University. So it's a new program. It's a one-year program aimed at people who are already professionals in their own fields, but who want to understand how to turn their ideas into businesses, how to develop their existing businesses, maybe how to create a startup out of their professional ideas. It's a one-year program. And I helped co-design that program and launch that program 2 years ago. I was the first director of this program for a couple of years. And I would have those students for a week. We would call it a wintermester, which happened in early spring. And this is what we would have to do. So you see, I would have them for 32 academic hours for a week. which meant that in the morning they would go about their daily work, they would go to their jobs, they would care about their families, and then in the afternoon at about 4 p.m. they would come to the rehearsal room and work for 4 straight hours with me. We would do it for 5 days or 4 days in a row. And then on the final day, we did a public presentation. So when we started the project, all they knew was that they will have to put on a public presentation in front of a live audience, and it will be on International Women's Day, right? So this is all they had. They knew for that particular, and it was a 50-50 group, so 50% men, 50% women. And you see the group here, they're taking their final bow. They already received the flowers and the cake, and everything seems very good. But when we started, I asked them only one thing to do. I asked them to think, do research, whatever, do search their soul, and bring images of what International Women's Day mean to them. And that was it. I didn't ask them to read any articles, to bring in any research. I just asked them to bring images, just to print out the images and to bring them into the room. And that's a very important first step of this process, which is visualization. It's very easy for us to hide behind words, to hide behind data, to hide behind rationalization. But what I wanted to access was their emotional intelligences, was their emotional response to the topic. So they laid out their images on the floor, and we started the discussion. I asked them to comment why they chose these images, and then I asked other people to comment what these images meant to them. And we ended up having a very profound 2-hour discussion about equality in general, about what it means, what gender roles mean for us in our daily life and our work environment, in the market. We had a student from China, so also culturally and cross-culturally what that means, right? What impact does it have on us as managers and entrepreneurs and just human beings? So we distilled that conversation into 4 big concepts that kind of like threads ran throughout the entire discussion. So you can see them here in all caps: fear, perfection, happiness, and beauty. And then we came up with the title, which was equality or equity, right? Equality in Lithuanian, lygybė. So that we discovered after that discussion of the images that those 4 topics were important to all of us, regardless of our culture, regardless of our positions in our companies, and regardless of our gender. We all, were afraid of certain things. We all felt pressure to be perfect in certain situations. We all wanted to be happy. And beauty, the myth is that beauty is only important to women, but it turned out that men are equally preoccupied with beauty as women. So we distilled those 4 concepts, and then we started to devise a performance. So I used devised theater techniques, and if you have questions about that, I can go deeper into that. But you can see a little bit of our work process here in the pictures. But the thing is that devised theater is when you only have the topic, and then you use your actors or your participants as screenwriters. So you write the screen together, and you decide, you block the scenes together, and then you come up with a final performance all together. So you do not start with a pre-written script. You just start with the idea, with the 4 concepts, and then, working with certain exercises, through certain exercises, you your work results in a performance. So, and then a very important process of that for the classes, for the purpose of the class, is reflection. So when they put on the performance, they had an after show discussion with their audience, and then we had a separate reflection session a week after the process, so that they have time to think about it in a classroom. Right. So first they talked to the audience, then we talked about what they learned in the classroom. And in this blue box, you see a couple of links to the material and of the show and the discussion online, and you can look it up. But for now, let's focus on the reflection session. So in the reflection session, the main question was, because in the after show discussion with the audience, they asked, how the audience understood something, if they were able to explain themselves, and so on and so forth. But in the reflection session that we did a week after the process, I asked them, the main question was, so what did you learn? What is your main takeout as an individual, as a future entrepreneur from the process? And this was the feedback that they gave me. So one of the ladies that was part of the performance, she said, I realized that my classmates are very funny, smart, and cool human beings. And that was something that was very new to her, that came as a surprise to her after an entire semester of studying these people. So I think this is a part, this is the where the humanization of the problem and of team members comes in, because in classes they were all people who had kind of high management positions, and they were very kind of big-headed and very opinionated, and they would have many conflicts while trying to do group assignments, because they all thought that they had to prove something to each other. But in those conflicts, they failed to see each other as a human being. Whereas this entire process actually helped them see each other. Oh, actually, these people are cool. They're not mean. They're actually funny. They're smart. They're sensitive, vulnerable. Maybe I do want to work with them. And we noticed that shift in the second semester, on the spring semester, after this winter semester, that those conflicts actually almost disappeared from the group works. That actually they started working as groups on their group assignments much better. And the climate in the classroom really became better for the professors and for the students themselves. Okay, another student said, a male student said, I understood that it is never too late to change. Circumstances change, people around you change, and you can change too. And this is one of the things that we struggle with in transformative education, especially in entrepreneurial education, where so much of the teaching is about mindset. So people come into the classroom saying, oh yeah, I want to learn. I'm very open-minded. I want to kind of do new things, try new things. But as soon as you ask them to try new things, they become very defensive because you ask them to step out of their comfort zone. Right? And even though rationally they understand that this is a part of the learning process, it's very difficult to do if you have been doing things a certain way for 20 or so years as the student. But this little exercise, this little kind of workshop and performance kind of showed him that no, not necessarily. I can change and I can do things differently, and maybe, I can explore that. Another student said, I learned that things can happen only when you do something. Overthinking is counterproductive. You have to trust the process. And now those of us who teach entrepreneurship know that it's very difficult to kind of teach students to trust the process, because they just always want to jump to the result. They say, tell me the right answers. Tell me what to do. Tell me what you want from me. They are not kind of, they're reluctant to discover, to learn, to really understand how the knowledge is formed. And that process where they didn't actually know what the result is going to be, it was devised theater. We were devising the result together. That actually helped them understand, that it's okay, that if you have a process in place, it can actually lead you to unexpected results that can be good. And then finally, this final quote is from a medical professional. She's a very kind of well-known, established authority on mental health in Lithuania and in European Union. And she came to our program because she wanted kind of to commercialize her research. And she said, this project unlocked something in me. My level of confidence increased. I noticed that I started doing things differently in my daily life too. So basically, this is when we talk about creativity, which is very, very kind of important for innovation, where you say, think outside the box, try and find new angles of looking at the same thing, So that was the result that she felt that she achieved. So that is the MBA entrepreneurships, people. Now, another case I want just to cover very briefly is a class that I teach for a Bachelor's of Science in Event Engineering. I used to teach, now I don't teach that anymore. But at Vilnius Tech University, we have this program, Event Engineering, and we're basically training technical directors for live events, all sorts of live events, starting with, I don't know, live reading of a book in a library and, you know, going all the way up to a big global international tour of an international band, like, I don't know, Imagine Dragons, whatever. So I would get these students in their first semester, and I would have to teach them live show production. So that was their introduction to live show, how live shows works and what you have to, what it takes to put on a live show. So also I started not with the script, but I started with a set of poems. Those of you who are from Lithuania will know that the Kukučio ballades, or the ballads of Kukutis. And I gave this, it's also part of a visualization, because poems is metaphor. Poems is images painted with words. So I didn't want to be very literal. I just gave a set of poems to my students, and I said, you know, let's find the main theme of those poems and let's see how we want to interpret that. And the students came up with a show about emigration and brain drain in Lithuania. That was their own topic. I didn't impose that topic on them, but they felt that that particular, I don't know, there was something in the poems that spoke to them about that particular topic, and they worked on it for a week. They were, you know, divided into departments. There was the director's department, the lighting department, the sound department, and the set department. And then after the entire, and then they had to premiere their play, their live show in front of a live audience again, which is a very important process. And then when I collected reflections from the students, one of them said, and you see it in the speech bubble, we had so many fights during that course, but that made us the best of friends. There is no batch in the whole faculty that would get along better than us now. And actually, the interesting result is that is the course or the group of students that has the highest retention rate over the past 4 years in the faculty. So those of you who teach at engineering schools probably know that retention is something that we struggle with. You know, students start their program with ideas that we're going to construct something new and create new things, and then they have to study mathematics, physics, chemistry, and all of those very difficult subjects. They decide that's not for them, and you know, so this is an issue. But with that particular program, with that particular group, they have the highest retention rate. Or I don't know, maybe we have only a few students who decided to drop the course, the program. But and they kind of, when you talk to the students themselves, they always say that, oh, it's because of that first semester when we had those fights and when we actually had to work together, we got to know each other as people, we became loyal to each other, and now we actually enjoy each other's company and we support each other, and that makes it easier for us to study and to go through this 9 rounds of hell of mathematics, physics, and so forth. So that these are my cases. If you have any questions, I will be very happy to answer them. If you want to ask any questions in private, you can always look me up on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Instagram, just by typing my name and first name and last name into the search field. And that's it from me.